Looks like we've got a hefty stack of guides and articles here all about navigating the Irish pension system. Someone's thinking ahead to their retirement in the Emerald Isle.
Always a wise move, to be sure,
Yeah.
especially if you're aiming to really grasp the full picture of Irish pensions, how they work, the different types, and how to make them work for you.
Well, from the looks of this mountain of material, you've definitely been doing your homework. But I get it. Even with all the right resources, sometimes it feels like you're searching for that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We're here to help clear the fog.
Exactly. Understanding the system is more important than ever these days, particularly with the changes coming down the line. Speaking of which, you've got the pensions roadmap here. Did you know that the state pension age is actually going up in the next few years?
Yeah, ticking clock on that one, I guess. So, the state pension, probably a good place to start, right? Seems like the Irish pension system has a few different pieces to the puzzle.
You've got that right. It's definitely multifaceted, but the state pension is the cornerstone for a lot of folks. Now, it's important to note there are actually two parts to it. You've got the contributory pension and the non-contributory pension.
Okay, so the contributory pension, that's the one that's directly tied to your PRSI contributions, right? Those Social Security payments you make while you're working, kind of like paying your dues for the big retirement party later on.
Spot on. The more you contribute through PRSI during your working years, the more you stand to receive from the contributory state pension down the line.
Makes sense. So what about people who maybe haven't worked in Ireland their whole lives or who've taken career breaks? Where does that leave them?
That's where the non-contributory pension comes into play. For this one, eligibility is determined by your income and assets. It's means tested. So even if your PRSI contributions were limited, you might still qualify for some support from the state pension.
Okay, that's good to know. A bit of a safety net there. But let's say someone's looking to build a really comfortable retirement nest egg, something beyond just the state pension. That's where those occupational pensions come in, right? The ones offered through your employer.
Absolutely. They're a key piece of the puzzle when it comes to building a comfortable retirement. And you got two main flavors to choose from: defined benefit and defined contribution, each with its own set of pluses and minuses.
Let's dive into those a bit, shall we? Defined benefit sounds pretty self-explanatory, doesn't it? You get a guaranteed income every month after you retire, regardless of what's happening in the financial world.
Exactly that. Predictable income is the name of the game with defined benefit schemes. It's all calculated based on your salary and how long you've been with a company. You get that steady stream of income throughout your retirement, no matter what storms might be brewing in the stock market. The documents you've gathered even mention additional benefits, like survivors' pensions for spouses' peace of mind for you and your loved ones.
That peace of mind is probably priceless for a lot of people. But I have a hunch these defined benefit schemes, they're a bit rare these days, aren't they? Like finding a four-leaf clover.
You're right on the money there. They were once the gold standard, but defined benefit schemes are becoming less and less common. The truth is, they can get quite pricey for employers to maintain, especially with folks living longer these days.
So defined benefit schemes, a bit of a dying breed. Makes sense when you think about the cost for employers. So that brings us to their increasingly popular cousin, right? The defined contribution plan. Sounds like that's where things are headed in the pension world these days.
Definitely gaining traction. Defined contribution, it's a bit more of a team effort. Both you and your employer chip in regularly, and that money gets invested. Think of it like your own personal retirement piggy bank, or should I say pot of gold, to keep things Irish.
But with this one, there's no guarantee how much will actually be in the pot when you retire, right? It's a
Yeah.
bit more of a gamble, yeah. Could be sipping champagne or counting pennies, depending on how savvy an investor you are.
That's the trade-off. Defined contribution schemes do come with that element of risk.
Mm,
Your retirement income is directly tied to how well your investments perform.
yeah.
But as you said, many people like having that control, that flexibility to manage their own pension pot.
Being the captain of your own ship, as they say, you decide how your money is invested, what level of risk you're comfortable with. Lots of those guides you've shared actually highlighted that control aspect as a key difference.
They're spot on for sure. Another big plus with defined contribution plans, and it's mentioned quite a bit in these documents, is portability. Unlike those older defined benefit schemes, if you decide to switch jobs, you can usually take your defined contribution plan with you. No need to start from scratch.
Uh-huh. Very handy in today's job market. Okay, so we've covered the state pension and occupational pensions, both the defined benefit and defined contribution flavors. But what about going solo? For folks who really want to take the reins and manage their own retirement savings, That's where personal pensions come in, right? PRSAs and the like.
Bingo. Personal pensions are like the independent path to retirement planning. You're in the driver's seat. They're particularly popular with folks who are self-employed contractors, freelancers, you name it, or for anyone who wants to add a little extra padding to their existing pension setup.
You've mentioned possibly exploring the world of self-employment in the future, so this is pretty relevant for you, right? This whole personal pension route. And they do seem to offer quite a bit of flexibility.
Flexibility is the name of the game with personal pensions. You get to handpick your own investment funds, control how much you're contributing, and adjust things as needed based on your income and goals. And actually, a few of the documents you shared made a really compelling case for why personal pensions, especially PRSAs, can be a really good fit for the self-employed crowd. Something to keep in mind down the line.
Sounds great, but all that freedom to choose, you've got to be a bit financially savvy, right?
Yep.
It's like you become your own personal pension fund manager. No pressure or anything.
You're not wrong. You've got to be willing to put in a bit of homework, make some decisions, and stay on top of things. But hey, with great flexibility comes great responsibility, right? Okay, so we've got a good handle on the types of pensions you've got over here in Ireland, but let's switch gears for a second and talk about those just-in-case moments.
Right.
Life happens, right? Sometimes you need to access funds before you've reached those golden retirement years.
So, about those what if moments we talked about. Life throws a curveball, you need some cash. Can you actually tap into your pension before retirement in Ireland?
It's a question that comes up all the time, and it's a good one. Your pension is meant for the long haul, but there are a few specific situations where early access might be possible.
Okay, so not exactly something you can just cash out to fund a spontaneous trip to Galway then.
Not quite, no. Ireland's pretty strict about protecting those retirement savings. Early access is usually limited to very specific circumstances, things like serious health issues.
Right, so if you're facing a medical condition that prevents you from working, you might be able to get to those funds sooner.
Exactly. And of course, there are situations where someone might become permanently unable to work. But using your pension for, say, buying a house or paying off debt, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, I'd heard rumors about that, but it sounds like those are more wishful thinking than anything else.
Pretty much, it's a hot topic, but right now, Ireland doesn't allow early pension withdrawals for things like buying a house or tackling debt. Your pension's treated as a separate entity. It's there to support you once you've clocked out of the workforce, so to speak.
Good to know. Now, I did notice something interesting in these guides about PRSAs, those personal retirement savings accounts. They seem to offer a bit more flexibility on the early access front.
You're right, they do. With a PRSA, you can usually access your funds once you hit 60, whether you're still working or not. A bit more wiggle room there. But it's still technically considered early access. It's just the age threshold that's a bit different.
Okay, so a tad more leeway with those PRSAs. But let's say someone meets the criteria for early access, whatever the reason might be. What are the potential downsides they should be aware of? Not all rainbows and pots of gold, I imagine.
Well, the biggest thing is the impact on your retirement income down the line. The earlier you dip into your pension, the less time those funds have to grow. Think of it like this. Those investments need time to work their magic, to compound and build on each other.
It's like pulling up your potatoes before they've had a chance to fatten up. You might be a bit hungry later.
Exactly. And don't forget about everyone's favorite guest at the retirement party, the taxman.
Ah, yes, revenue. Never too far away, are they? Always ready for their cut.
Exactly. Early pension access can mean a hefty tax bill. You might be able to take out a certain amount as a tax-free lump sum, but anything beyond that is usually subject to income tax. Something to keep in mind for sure.
So early access, definitely not a decision to be made lightly. Lots to weigh up in terms of immediate needs versus those long-term goals.
Couldn't agree more. And it's always wise to explore absolutely every other option before even thinking about touching your pension pot. Have you looked into all the potential social welfare benefits that might be available? Ireland has a pretty comprehensive support system for those who need it.
Very true. Never be afraid to ask for help or advice if you need it right, especially when it comes to something as important as your financial well-being. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've explored the ins and outs of the Irish pension system, from the state pension to occupational pensions, defined benefit to defined contribution, even those personal pensions for the independent savers out there. We've even tackled the thorny issue of early access and those tempting ETVs. Phew.
You've been a fantastic student. And you're right, the key takeaway is that planning for your retirement here in Ireland is a personal journey. It's about understanding your options, weighing the risks and rewards, and making choices that align with your own unique goals and circumstances.
And never underestimate the power of good advice. Just like a good bartender can steer you toward the perfect pint, a qualified financial advisor can help you navigate the world of pensions. They'll give you personalized recommendations, answer your questions, and make sure you feel confident about your retirement plan.
Well said. And remember, no matter how old you are or where you are in your career, it's never too early or too late to start planning for a comfortable and enjoyable retirement.
Slant.